Hello, folks. I'm David, and I'm an alcoholic. Today, we are at the Say What podcast studio, sponsored by the Covenant Studios. I've got a friend of mine here. His name is Reams today. Is that what it is?
On this side of town, yeah.
On this side of town, okay. And he's a buddy of mine. He's got some sobriety now. I've got 18 years now. And we're going to talk about staying sober. And so, Reem, introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Reams. I'm an alcoholic as well. Known you for a while, and we actually met in a recovery program, and I've always admired your sobriety and what you've put together. I try to emulate that as well. My journey had come with relapse being part of that story, and each one being more painful than the other. But
it didn't get any better.
No, it got worse and worse and worse, and it eventually got so bad that I was willing to do anything. And so part of my staying humble and staying willing is every morning I'll go back and I'll take a look at those final days and how dark they got and how miserable they got. But, it was funny when you mentioned who I am today. When we met, I was kin, because consequences have always been part of alcohol with me.
Consequences are part of alcohol with every alcoholic.
The consequences just continued every single time. And so when I first came in to a recovery group, I was embarrassed and ashamed, and my mom had been an educator in this town for a very long time. And with the way I was living my life, I knew that was a reflection on her, if
not a good reflection.
Not a good reflection at all. And I hated that part of it. So when I needed, as I was required to attend a recovery group, I didn't want, with a name like Reams, it's not like Kevin or Todd or Steve. Multiple. So I wanted no part of it getting back to this side of town. So in other words, I went to a recovery group 10, 15 minutes from here, and when I walked in, the sheet that I needed to have signed said Kenneth Morrison on it. So I said, okay. So I'm Ken, and I look back on that, how ridiculous that was, because I would just drive 10 minutes back this way and drink in every bar. The people that I was trying to shield from this were the ones seeing me drunk. But I thought if I go over there and I go under this alias, it's never going to get back to my mom, which I'm sure my mom was in a Walgreens or a Walmart and said, hey, I saw Reams the other day. He was drinking.
Moms have spies.
Sure. And being a teacher, my mom had plenty.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know why. I would have been in a better position had I just gone to a recovery group here and used Reams. That way at least they could say, hey, I hear Reams is in recovery, but I have a drinking problem and a thinking problem.
Well, let me ask you. You've met a few alcoholics.
Sure.
And you've met a few in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Who have you met that life was going well, no consequences, and they just decided to get sober to go into recovery?
Right. We don't come in on a winning streak.
No.
Right?
Do you know any?
None.
No.
None at all. We come in broken, beaten, and battered. And in looking back, we get signs along the way that, hey, you may want to take a look at your disease, your addiction, whatever anyone chooses to call your problem. It doesn't matter to me. But when a judge requires you to go get a signature because of how you drink, that should have been, people say that should have been a red flag. That should have been 1,000 red flags. Because most people, when they go drink, they just get a tab. I get a sheet from a judge. So something's going wrong here. But we're not willing till we're willing.
That's true. I remember a guy in a meeting, and I can't call his name. He'd been a bartender at one of the big high-class restaurants downtown Fort Worth. Bald-headed, dark-complected, huge brown eyes. And we were in a newcomers meeting. And the topic was, what brought you here? And he was a newcomer, that's why he was in the meeting. And he's sitting there talking with his head down in shame. And he's telling about his DWIs. And two of them happened in the McDonald's parking lot in front of his apartment. And when he told the story of in the McDonald's parking lot, passed out, drunk, we all died laughing. His head raised up, he smiled, his eyes were real big. He said, that's what I like about here. Is if I tell that somebody outside these doors,
Yeah.
they look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Y'all understand.
Yeah. We get it.
Yeah.
We've lived it. Yeah.
We've lived it.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I haven't lived the DWIs yet.
Right. And that's the thing, sober, I've never had a speeding ticket in my life, ever. I've never gotten a moving traffic violation, but I have 3 DWIs. I've wrecked my car. I've ran into things. I've done all kinds of things. When I drink, I make bad decisions. One of those bad decisions was I would drive a vehicle, and as unfortunate as those things were, I still remain grateful today that no one else was hurt. I don't say or myself, because I didn't give a damn. I wish I cared enough at that time about me, but I'm fortunate that I didn't cause irreversible damage to somebody else.
Maim or death.
You can fix a car. Eventually, if I choose to, which I do today, go on and get help. Those two things can fix themselves, but something like that would have been very, very difficult to forgive myself for. So if there's any gratitude in all of that, it was that.
We've sat in a lot of meetings together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always something funny.
Yeah.
Somebody always says something, and it's not a comedy club, okay? It's not that kind of meeting.
Right.
But somebody mentions, like, I know a gentleman that he got his DWI because tail light was broke on his car.
Right.
And he got pulled over. And if that damn tail light had not been broken, he would not have got a DWI. Somebody suggested to him that maybe if you had been drunk, you wouldn't have got a DWI.
Yeah.
And
It's funny how we think.
he said that didn't process until he was 2 years sober.
Right. Huh?
And then he finally understood what they were saying.
Sure. It's funny. It takes us coming in, and I had 1,000 instances like that. If this had not happened, and none of it had to do with the fact I was drunk. Right? I would come up with every reason, story, and excuse why this occurred to me. And never once did I say, had I just not been drunk, the outcome would have been completely different.
Yeah. I remember a meeting was over meditation. And the lady spoke up and said she was always heard, prayer and meditation, prayer and meditation, prayer and meditation. But she didn't know how to meditate. And at 14 years sober, she realized how to meditate. She said she recognized that she had been meditating all along. She was always thinking about what somebody did to her, how she was going to get back at them, how bad her life was, etc. And she said, that's meditation. I just needed to switch what I was meditating on.
That seems about right. We learn and we grow. I think it's a wonderful part of our program. I've come to have tremendous respect for our disease in that it is the only disease that is self-diagnosed. So you're being diagnosed with a fatal disease by a drunk. And that right there is cause for concern. However, we're held to slightly a different standard in that if you work the solution, you're to come out a better person, right? So
that's what they say.
That's what they say. So we try to find areas. Sometimes it takes a year too, just to touch on your story that you just shared about meditation, how we work through it, and finally we get there. And meditation is one of those areas that I had to improve on, And so, and that's meditation for me today is I listen, when I would do my prayers, but that's just me talking. So,
well,
I listen now.
I drive a lot. I'm on the road all the time in my job. And if I'm not careful, my mind will go to an argument. In my mind, I can have an argument with anybody. Normally it's a family member or a close friend.
Sure.
And I play the whole arguments in my head. And my mind tells me what they're going to say to me. My mind tells me what I'm going to say back to them. It tells me what their retort is and my retort. And I can work myself into a big, mad, pissed off at somebody that's not even there.
Yeah. At the same red light, I can go through resentment, love, joy, anger. All in the light is not even turning green.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad today those are just things that go on in my head versus come out my mouth.
When I catch myself doing that,
Yeah.
I know I can change the channel, so to speak. And so I try to think of something good, something positive.
Sure.
Or what I can do to help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that it keeps me from being mad at people when they're not there.
Yeah.
That's I hate being mad at somebody and I see them later in the day and I'm pissed off at them. And they had no clue.
Right.
Because they weren't in my head with me.
Right. And then they don't care.
No, they don't care.
I care more about this imaginary resentment than they do. And that's those are those things that come after once we get in there and we get comfortable again. Because I know with me, not just the last time, but the couple of times before that, just acclimating back into a world that came from isolation. Because I used to be a very social person. I used to love being around people. I used to love socializing. That's part of that attraction to a bar. But it ended very dark, very isolated, very alone, and very, very sad. Very sad. It wasn't always like that, but that's where for a progressive illness like ours, that's where it goes.
And the sad thing is, in a bar, you're not the only alcoholic.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
what's funny about how things have changed for me. I've been around a lot of alcoholics. I am one. And I've been around a lot of recovering alcoholics. And I love recovering alcoholics. Alcoholics are intolerable. Oh my Lord. And the
best stories.
Oh my gosh. And they're all bullshit. You know, I never was in a bar and the bartender, there's sometimes I do this thing in my head when I'm in a meeting and we're on a topic, and I find a program of recovery fascinating if you're really dialed in, if you're really listening. And one of the readings was Hole in My Soul. And I read it, and I was listening to people share, and I loved everything they had to say. And I thought to myself, okay, is this important to me? Because honesty has become very important to me. And I imagine in my head the thousands of times I walked into a bar and the bartender says, "How you doing today, Reams?" And I said, "Well, there's a hole in my soul." Because when I go into a bar, my apartment can be burned to the ground. My car has a flat tire. I'm behind on every bill. Bill collector's calling me, and I walk in and sit on a bar stool. Bartender says, "How we doing today, Reams?" All good.
Yeah.
All good. Because I didn't know how to tell the truth. I didn't know how to be open. I lived a fraudulent life.
Well, and all the issues that were going on, if you had been sober, you would have probably taken care of those issues before they became a problem.
Without a doubt. No, I would sacrifice anything for alcohol.
I know.
You know, anything.
I can live without electricity for a few days.
Sure. But not alcohol. I had to have it, and I drank my way out of a marriage. I drank my way out of a solid career.
Now be careful what you say. Because when you said you drank yourself out of a marriage,
Right.
there may be some teetotalers out there that pick up a drink to get out of a marriage.
They do. I was not one of them. I was. You know what? It's part of that learning process for me. I always used to say after that marriage ended that I never wanted to get divorced. I never wanted to break up the family. And now I can look back and say, yeah, I did. Because if I respected it, if I appreciated it like I should have, I would have never behaved the way I did.
And then you would have never got divorced.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I love that. Everybody always says, well, that's just the way it was supposed to work out. That's what God wanted, right? That's what God intended. Okay, well, really? Or is that just my way of making peace with the fact that she's gone on to meet a great man and she's happy? And I'm so thrilled for her because I adore my ex-wife. She's an incredible mom. She's an incredible grandparent, and it wasn't always like that, and so now I remember, hell, I see her now and I see what a real marriage is like compared to one night I'd gone out drinking and we lived in a beautiful house. Kids were young and she had this Paseo and those damn Paseos, they're 4.5 feet tall. I'm 6'3", long legs, and I'd been out drinking all night long, and our garage was detached from the house, and you had to drive in and then go around the house and I go to step on the brake. I stepped on the gas. I drive straight through that garage and get out, and you hear all this metal and all this stuff, and I'm trying to figure out, and I look around the back of that garage, and the grill had flown up, landed on the hood, and I look up, and she's on the second floor looking down, and I said, when in the hell did you put the grill here? I just got that grill. It couldn't have been 3, 4, 5 months old.
Her fault.
Her fault. because she put the grill there. That's who she was married to. And now she's got a great guy. And I'm very happy for her.
He hasn't driven through the garage yet?
He hasn't?
I'm asking.
No. No, he would not go out and do something ridiculous like that. And I am, with our disease, there's many changes. Life goes in so many different directions. But when I do make gratitude lists, that's one of them, that she did move on and she did meet someone that she deserves. And I love seeing that.
I had a sponsor that made us keep a little notebook. And we had to, and if I could call it from memory, what we were grateful for that day, what we had done positive that day, what we could have done better, and 5 things that we were grateful for that day. And then we had to send him that list every day.
Damn.
And
that's a lot of work.
Yeah. And
I get it, though.
But it worked. It taught me every day to make a list of the things I was grateful for.
Yeah.
And what I could do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it helped a lot. I mean, he was my sponsor till he died. So he was my sponsor about 3 years. And I made a list every day for 3 years. Oh, we also had to read a line in the Big Book of AA and then paraphrase it for him. I guess that was his test to see if we'd actually done the work.
Yeah, I get it. And that work is definitely worth it, because we are a program of growth, and gratitude was difficult for me to find. And God was going to make sure I found it, right? So I finally came to the realization that I was not going to be grateful for anything until it was almost taken away from me. I was never grateful for a roof over my head. I was never grateful to be alive. I was never grateful to have a mattress to sleep on. That's all things I took for granted. Those are just givens, right?
Food to eat.
Food to eat, to be able to take a shower in the morning, all this stuff.
Hot water for that shower.
Hot water. And part of the reason I could not stay sober was I really didn't grasp the concept of, do you know that I've not taken everything from you yet? But you're getting close. And it was when I thought I was going to get evicted from my apartment, that I was going to get my car repossessed, that all my credit cards were gone. But all of those things had to happen in order for me to truly understand how grateful I am, and that the things that I had lost, I can rebuild. But there would be a reconstruction phase of me all the way around.
Well, and you got nearly to death's door also, didn't you?
Nearly death's door?
Death's door.
Death's door, yeah. I never thought that was possible. But there was a morning, it was around 11 a.m. I had someone very special in my life at the time that was a nurse. And there would be 2 instances of this. And one, not so funny, and the other, pretty damn funny, but funny now. It wasn't funny then.
Since you survived?
Yeah. But there was extreme concern for my survival. And fortunately for me, this person that was in my life at the time cared more about me than I cared about myself. So she came over, and it looked like a damn scene out of MASH, right? Because they're in those makeshift tent. Most people won't remember MASH, but
Oh, I do.
it's the military medic gig. So and I've got to give nurses credit. They're very creative, but took my lamp, the tall one, and took a coat hanger and hooked it on the lamp and used it as an IV drip station. So I'm getting an IV at home, and for fear that if I drank any more that day, that was gonna be it.
Alcohol poisoning.
Mm-hmm. It was well on its way, and there were things that happened in those final weeks where I got to see a group of people care enough that drastic changes had to be made. And one of them was another friend of mine, ironically a nurse as well, had been at my apartment seeing she was going to be moving to a different state. And she reached out to my daughter and said, I don't think your dad is going to survive. And there's one thing that we have to do, and you're not going to want to do it. He's not going to want you to do it, and I don't even want to be doing what I'm doing right now. But if we're going to save his life, this has to happen. So I didn't know all of that was at play. So I'm sitting there, and it's 10 in the morning. I've gone through one bottle of Jack Daniels. As soon as the song that was on was over, I was ready to go start the other one. And there's a knock on my door, and no one knocks on my door. So I'm thinking, and eventually the door gets open, and there's 3 marshals, and these dudes were so big, even dead drunk, I knew these are the biggest dudes I've ever seen in my entire life. These guys are massive. So that marshal letters, I'm not kidding you, 2 inches, 3 inches tall, you could read the word. You know, you put that shit on me. Yeah, you'll see an M and an A maybe. For them, Marshall was right there. And said, Kenneth Morrison? I said, yeah. They said, need you to put your hands on the wall. And I was very combative, very argumentative, because I still did not grasp what's happening here.
Do you know any drunks that aren't?
Agreed. And so all I wanted them to do was determine that they're at the wrong place and haul ass, because I'm ready for another drink. And we need to put your hands on the wall. I just immediately go sit back down. I have no interest. And that's who I am when I drink. You know, I don't use common sense. I'm very argumentative. I'm very combative. And I just wouldn't go sit back down. You need to stand up. I said, well, that's going to be a little difficult to do because I've already polished off a bottle of Jack Daniels. You don't say that
to a marshal.
To a marshal. He said, stand up, or we're going to stand you up. Eventually, hands on the wall, handcuffed, put me in an SUV and start driving. I think I'm going to the Hearst drunk tank. So I'm already figuring out my way out. I'll sit this out. I'll pay your little fine, and I'll be on my way. We get on a highway. We keep driving. It's apparent that we're not going there. And so I ended up 7 days in JPS, and still wasn't open-minded or willing to hear anything that my doctor or my case manager had to say. And they put me on all kinds of medications.
When you got out of JPS, did you just go back home?
Yeah.
They didn't require you to go to AA or any recovery program or anything?
No. And see, that's what I learned. And anybody listening to this out there that have had their challenges staying stopped, right? I had to get into a book that would show me, because when I got out of there and I knew my daughter was the one that loved me enough to agree to let that happen, knowing that there's the possibility that I would never forgive her for that, which was not the case at all. Nothing but gratitude and love for my little girl. She tried to, save my life. I would be put on these medications, and those worked for a few days with DTs and anxiety and depression and all this other stuff. But I was back at it again. And I could not understand why. Why am I going to meetings? I have friends in the fellowship. I do what I'm told to do. I all this other stuff. I have a great sponsor, and I drink again. Well, finally, it hit home. There's a couple of pages in a book that we read that explain this to me. I am beyond human aid. There's no 10th floor of a JPS that's going to save me. There's no sponsor. There's no group. There's no children, grandchildren, medications. It doesn't work like that, right? All of those are pieces that I must have daily. And the other is a relationship with a higher power. And I put all those together and it works. I leave one piece out, it doesn't.
Falls apart.
Yeah, it falls apart that fast. And so I now am so humbled. I have been literally to my lowest low. I would get out of jail and think, God, this is my lowest low. I divorced, my lowest low. I'd lose a job, quit, oh, this is the worst. Credit card balances exceeding insane amounts. Oh my God, this is the worst. And go back out and drink again because I didn't know what the worst was. But the worst was, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you in this room, my own home, and you are never going to be as miserable as you are right now. And it took that. Never to want to go back to that again. That feeling.
Well, there's one more level. And there's a gentleman that I knew that attended meetings I went. And he had trouble staying sober. He'd get 6 months, go out 2 months, come back in. And his doctor told him that if you don't quit drinking, you will die. I went to his funeral. There were 400 and some people there.
Yeah. And that's what's so heartbreaking. We don't feel loved. I recently lost a friend to our disease, and I had many a conversation with him about how great of a guy he was and how much I enjoyed being around him. And when he would drink just enough, he would finally open up and he would say, man, I just want somebody to love me. And it took his passing for the expression. It is so sad. If he got to see all those messages, and they were sincere,
Yeah.
how loved he was. And that's another very painful thing about our disease. We don't see how loved we are. And I hate that. And that's what drives me to stay sober one more day. I'm not going to stay sober today on yesterday's recovery. I've learned I have to take what I did yesterday because it worked and double my efforts today, and it just might work again. But I wish, or I hope, that every alcoholic stays sober long enough to see how loved they are.
Yeah.
That's the devastation and the sadness. I do feel loved today. I feel loved by people today. Life is worth living.
Well, I'm not going to show
today.
you. I love you, but not here on camera.
Sure, fair
Yeah.
enough. But that's what I go and see you go on and have a happy marriage. I see we do recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. The world opens up, and that's beautiful for me to see, not only in myself, but in someone else. If my life, honestly, outside of being a dad, being a grandpa, and now, I have a precious dog. If I could add one other thing to that before my time here is done, it is to watch another alcoholic come in hopeless and become hopeful.
Well, Ken, I appreciate you coming in today.
I love being here, man. It's good to see you.
Well, good to see you. I'll show you love off camera.
Appreciate that.
Well, folks, Listen, if you have a drinking problem, there is solutions. You can reach out to me, reach out to Ken, reach out to the good folks at AA. They'll help. Till next time, see you later.